All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about one of humanity's oldest and, let's be honest, most intense rituals, animal sacrifice. It's a practice that somehow connects ancient empires with modern faiths, and it pops up in just about every corner of the globe. Now, you might be thinking of this as some kind of relic from a long-gone past, right? But what's incredible is that animal sacrifice was actually a cornerstone of worship in almost every major civilization you can think of. From the Near East to the Americas, this one act, offering an animal to a higher power, is like a universal thread woven through our shared human story. And this is not just ancient history. Not at all. Millions of people today carry on the tradition. During Eid al-Adha, Muslims around the world commemorate Abraham's obedience. In parts of India and Nepal, offerings are made to the goddess Kali. Santeria practitioners use sacrifice to connect with their deities, and even Ethiopian Orthodox feasts often involve ritually prepared animals, a practice with deep roots in the Old Testament. So when you see the same, very specific practice appearing in so many different cultures that were supposedly disconnected, it just begs a huge question. Did everyone just come up with this idea on their own? Or could it all trace back to a single common origin? That's what we're going to dig into. To find an answer, we're going to explore a really fascinating theory that comes right out of the biblical narrative. It suggests that, yeah, sacrifices happened early on, but one specific event, right after a world-altering cataclysm, became the true origin point, kind of like a reset for this ritual for all of humanity to come. To really get this, we've got to see the difference between the first offerings and what you might call the foundational one. So way back in Genesis, you have Abel's offering, the first accepted blood sacrifice. But that was a personal act, an individual thing before the Great Flood. After the flood, Noah makes a sacrifice, and this one is totally different. He's not just some guy. He represents all of surviving humanity. His act is for a whole new world, and it sets the pattern for every nation that would spring from his family. This verse right here, this is huge. It's the first time the Bible ever mentions an altar being built for this purpose. And who's building it? Noah, the man who, according to the text, is the ancestor of every single person alive today. This one act effectively becomes ground zero for the ritual. Okay, so let's break this down, because the details of what Noah did are not just random. They actually lay out a kind of blueprint, a set of core ingredients that would be copied and adapted in rituals for thousands of years to follow. And this is so interesting. You can see how these four pieces create a complete pattern. First, there's the altar. It creates a designated sacred space. Second, he uses only clean animals. These are specific animals God had already pointed out as being acceptable. Third, the pleasing aroma is mentioned, which symbolizes God accepting the offering. And finally, and this is crucial, the act leads directly to the covenant, God's promise to never again destroy the world by flood. That's the blueprint right there. So how in the world does one event, performed by one family on a mountain, spread across the entire globe? Well, that leads us to the idea of a great diffusion. The biblical story here is pretty straightforward. The whole world is repopulated through Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. As their families grow and spread out across the continents, they take their core traditions with them. And what's the most foundational religious memory they have? This sacrifice. Over hundreds, then thousands of years, cultures change, languages change, but that core idea of the ritual remains, just dressed up in different cultural clothes. So what this all means is that, from this perspective, the fact that we see sacrifice everywhere isn't a massive coincidence. It's not a case of independent invention. Instead, it's presented as a clear case of cultural diffusion, a tradition passed down and carried out from a single source to all the nations of the world. Okay, so if this single origin theory holds up, we should be able to see the echoes of Noah's blueprint in rituals that are still happening today. So let's take a look. Let's start with Islam, because the tradition is so central there. The main figure in the Eid al-Adha sacrifice is Abraham, or Ibrahim. And if you trace the genealogy in the biblical account, Abraham is a direct descendant of Noah through his son Shem. So you have this clear, unbroken line carrying the tradition forward. And this story just perfectly captures the theme, doesn't it? It's all about obedience and that relationship with God. And it all leads to a substitute, an animal given in place of a person. That is the absolute core of the substitutionary sacrifice idea that was first laid out with Noah.
And when you start comparing different traditions, the parallels are pretty wild. The Islamic sacrifice is all about obedience and charity, echoing the Abrahamic covenant. The Santeria rituals, which focus on blood as a life force, that's an idea you can find right in the book of Leviticus, which says the life of the flesh is in the blood. And Ethiopian Orthodox feasts are deeply commemorative, keeping traditions alive that trace all the way back to this ancient lineage.
So we've traced this one ritual from a single man on a mountain to millions of people all over the world today. What's the big takeaway here? What should we make of all this?
At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this one incredibly powerful concept: atonement through a substitute. It's this idea that an innocent life can be offered up to bridge the gap between humanity and God, to somehow restore a relationship that's been broken. And that leaves us with one last really big question. This idea of substitution, one life given for another, it's one of the most stubborn themes in all of religious history. It echoes from Noah's altar all the way to the core theology of the Christian cross. So why? Why does this single idea resonate so deeply with us? Across thousands of years, across countless cultures and continents, that's something to think about.